Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast. I am George Brown.
And I'm Chris Horn.
How you doing?
I'm good. We haven't had any mega action since the last pod. In between the if the in between the last pod and the one before that was normal, then I'd be a very happy person. I'm just a bit gutted it's not consistent.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is obviously now the shooting season has properly ended, so neither of us have been out doing anything particularly of import to mention, so we haven't got an awful lot of exciting stuff to chat about in this bit.
No, and you know how the first weekend of February is pigeon weekend, right?
Yeah.
And the syndicate's I've come along, we'll get out the pigeons, roost shooting, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, the first weekend of February, when you've been out for most Sundays traveling to the next shoot, is just at home with the children, whether you like it or not. So the idea of then going pigeon shooting on that Saturday was just never going to happen.
Well, I've decided that the season, or rather the year, shouldn't be broken up into 4 seasons. It should be 3 seasons. One of which is the shooting season. Another one is the cricket and fishing season. And then there's this rather unfortunate bit between sort of, the middle of February and, let's face it, nobody really wants to go play cricket in April. So we'll call it May. And I think that the name for that season should be the help season, because it's all a bit grim.
You mean you're not out on the chalk streams? That's prime, isn't it?
I can't afford to be out on the chalk streams.
but you can afford for 3 seasons of shooting.
Well, I don't pay for my shooting, Chris, as you know.
You need to get better at doing invites on the chalk streams in May, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so without further ado then, shall we introduce our guest?
We shall. So we've got highly trained gunsmiths with us today. So that means we've lined up all the questions that anyone in a gun shop would get really annoyed at us asking. And we've just saved them all for our guests. So I'm looking forward to that. He has 17 years of experience, formerly at BE Chaplain in Winchester. He then bought the business from the previous owners and now runs it purely as a gunsmith, specialising in Old English guns. Not just that, though. He's a competitive shotgun and rifle shot, winner of the Hurlingham Cup trophy in 2019. I definitely want to come back to that. He's 2-2 speed shooting champion, 2016, 2017 and 2019. So he's seriously rapid. So stop feeding the chickens, put the washing pegs back in the basket so you can put your hands together and give a very warm welcome to Alex Smith.
Well, that's a cracking intro. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Just basically read off the website, hey, which I must update because it's a little bit more years than that, but yeah,
no expense spared in researching this podcast.
So how many trophies did we miss?
I'm not sure it wasn't the trophies; it was the few more years of experience and. Experience 17. I think it was 17 when I started, so I think I've probably got 20 years of experience now. Yeah, I just need to update the website.
So 20 years of experience, but no more trophies.
No more trophies that I can recall. Certainly none to talk of. Anyway,
right. Just quickly for everyone else's benefit, and me about 10 minutes ago, the Hurlingham Cup. Talk us through it.
Well, one of the oldest shooting trophies ever, I believe. When the Hurlingham Club in London used to shoot live pigeon, that was one of the early trophies that they made in bits and pieces like that. So when it was live pigeon shooting, and I won it at AGL at King Grant and Lang, the shooting ground there, shooting Helice, or ZZ as they call it in the continent, but Helice shooting. Which is the modern or alternative to live pigeon shooting. And everyone asks me, what is Helice shooting? Well, actually, I describe it as the snitch from Harry Potter. It's quite literally a clay pigeon with wings coming out the side. And you have 5 boxes in front of you, just like the old pigeon days. And one would release at random. The clay itself is helicing, so it's oscillating and varying in direction, and one is released and then it whizzes off in any particular direction it likes, and you have to shoot it, separate the 2 different halves, and have to land it within a certain circle, just like live pigeon shooting was. back in the day.
That's epic.
I've seen videos. It looks so much fun.
It really is. It's ridiculously addictive. It's ridiculously addictive for so many ways. 1 minute you're on it, the next minute you're not. And there's some people that are very good at it. Marcus Idden from Express Cartridges, he's very, very good at it. And there's a few other people. Chris Potter is a veteran at it. But let me go back to the Hurlingham Cup, shot with a side-by-side as well. I don't know if that's part of the actual rules, but always was in the Hurlingham days as well anyway. But yeah, very good. I was pleased about that.
And 2-2 speed shooting.
Yeah, I'm quite proud of that one. That was my first bit of actual shooting I ever did, was with 2-2 target rifle shooting. And this particular, the speed shooting, we call the tile shoot. And quite literally, it is a polo-sized target at 25 yards with a single-shot rifle, martini action, or a bolt action, but I use a martini because it's quicker. Just like the one used on Zulu. So a martini, you load it in the top and move the lever and it ejects. So this is with a martini .22, open sights, peep sights, 25 yards, and you have to shoot them as quick as possible. And I think I got it down to about 14.7 seconds or something. So yeah, five targets. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, you must be deadly on squirrels out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as the window's open, I can hit them. Yeah. No, I was quite pleased with that one because it's quite a big, prestigious shoot at home. And we I don't know whether it's done throughout the country, but down in the south of England, there's also other shoots as well that are similar. But this one is actually, because you see the target, actually the polo break, it's quite good to actually watch. Yeah, it's fast and furious. You can't afford to miss or fumble.
Right. Well, so Alex, the way we like to start these podcasts off is just to wet everyone's whistle and make sure everybody's in the right frame of mind for a bit of a chat. So we kick off with a segment called What's That You're Drinking? So what have you got in your hand for this recording?
Well, as it goes, February being a short month, I choose not to drink at all in February. No alcohol has touched my lips in February due to, one, it being a short month, and two, I drink so much throughout the season. I think right now I've just got a coffee in my hand. Well, in my right hand, I've got a coffee. In my left hand, I've got a Partagas D4 as my usual everyday smoke.
Oh, lovely. I really like my cigars, by the way, as you can tell by that reaction.
Hint, nudge, nudge, I think that was, wasn't it? Yeah.
After this, I'll send you this new website I found where they come through in happy birthday wrapping paper with your fake cousin's name all over it with something else written on the customs label, and it's an absolute winner.
I tend to get mine from whoever's doing them the cheapest at the time. Yeah.
This will be that. That's the idea.
I like a bit of tax fraud on a podcast on a Monday afternoon. Very good.
I think they describe it as tax evasion.
Sorry, yes.
Either way, illegal. Yeah. It's not my fault this website wanted to accept my money. What was really interesting about the website is when you paid, it said you didn't actually pay. It sent you a link and it said, you'll get a request for payment in the next 24 hours. You then sent some money to this random place and hope your cigars would turn up. And I thought, what the hell? It's such a good deal. I might as well try it. And they turned up. I genuinely had accepted losing the money. Shop around is all I'd say on Google.
Great. So, Chris, what have you got then?
I've got the latest in my series of drinks for less than desirable pod timings. This being a Monday afternoon, I'm on an alcohol-free Heineken. So on another, I think it must have been a Monday pod, I had an alcohol-free Guinness, which, by the way, is top of the alcohol-free beer charts, in my opinion. I did meet someone, Ian Bell, Basque. He's not a fan. Anyway, with him the other day, over a also Monday lunch, I had a alcohol-free Peroni. Not bad, actually. I'll give that one. Alcohol-free Heineken, not so much. Not a massive fan of this one, but there you go. So I'm up to 3 on my alcohol-free beer ratings. They have got so much better than years ago, though. It's a bit like the old steel cartridge debate. Oh no, I used them back in '86 and they were crap. This is definitely the same game. They got a lot better. But yeah, this one, definitely the Guinness is the winner.
Interesting.
George, what are you on?
So what have I got? I think this is the first time ever all 3 people on the podcast have been alcohol-free. I was at my sister's engagement party over the weekend, and I confess I'm still slightly feeling the effects of it. And as you say, it's a Monday afternoon and we've got a busy week ahead. So I have got a very nice cup of tea, which is Fortnum & Mason's Royal Blend loose leaf tea. And
hold on, that's the second pod in a row that's made an appearance.
Oh yes, that's right.
That specific blend of tea.
Is that something you got in a Christmas cracker from your mother-in-law, or something that you just feel like you have to be promoting and getting rid of?
Do you know, it's funny you should say that. My mum started giving me Fortnum & Mason's tea, or well, no, I should say Father Christmas started giving me Fortnum & Mason's tea at Christmas when I was about 15 or 16. And every year since then, I have received at least 1 tin of Fortnum & Mason's Royal Blend. And there was a rather tricky period. Both my wife and I gave each other Fortnum & Mason's Royal Blend and various other blends at the same time. And we had an entire shelf in our cupboard given over to various boxes and tins of Fortnum and bags of Fortnum & Mason's tea.
So, I mean, of all the tricky periods one goes through in life, that has to be up there with one of the most trickiest moments. I must
It was
say.
very challenging. You didn't know what to have. We had Jubilee and all sorts. And then you try a new blend, and then it turns out it was a special occasion one, and they've discontinued it. So, but the Royal Blend is a mainstay.
No need for BBC News. We've got all the big issues on this podcast.
Quite so.
It seems like we're all at a similar age, and it's the worst thing you can say to someone. Yeah, I really like that. And then it's forever on, isn't it? That's all you ever get. Yeah. You said you liked it last year. You know.
Right. So an alcohol-free podcast.
It won't make any difference the amount of rubbish I spout, so crack on.
Okay, good. Well, that's perfect. So, Alex, what we do now is we turn to our postbag with a segment called Whose Bird Is It Anyway? And it's when we ask our listeners to send in their shooting quandaries and queries and dilemmas, and we do our level best to help them out. This episode submission comes from somebody who emailed pod@gunsonpegs.com, who I've decided to call Miss Havisham. We keep all our correspondence anonymous so that they are protected from the consequences of emailing in. So Miss Havisham has written with the subject line, The Missing Millionaire, and it goes on. My quandary is one that begins in February, however doesn't fully present itself until after the first frost, much like a ripe sloe. You can guarantee this issue will be something we have to deal with every autumn. As the season comes to an end, our diary begins to flutter. Plans for next season are rapidly beginning to occupy the pages. We have a great roving team who have shot together for many years. This team includes a very dear friend of ours who just so happens to be a bit of a tycoon. He's the heart and soul of the party on a shoot day, and a bottle of King's Ginger is never too far away. He very much enjoys his shooting, and when I look at his shoot diary, it makes me water at the mouth with envy. Needless to say, he's top of our list when putting together our team of 8. The WhatsApp messages are sent out, and without hesitation, a tiny thumb appears in the group and a bank transfer notice pings in the background. The day is booked. Fast forward a few months, summer's becoming a memory of sim days in shirt sleeves and crisp pints of cider. The weather's now on the turn, and anticipation for our day is running high. The mothballed WhatsApp group for this particular day begins to come back to life with travel arrangements and the jostling of who's rooming with who at the shoot's local pub. Then, as sure as anything, the message we've been waiting for. Ping. Lads, is there anyone who might be able to fill my peg? Silence as the other 7 members read. Ping. I've double booked myself. Silly me. Ping. If you can't fill the peg, I can send someone in my place. With little more than 48 hours before the day, we're usually unable to fill the peg. and have to result in a guest shooting as part of our tight-knit team. This often becomes a roll of the dice. We end up shooting with one of his friends from some far-flung corner of Britain who sometimes doesn't get our etiquette or humour. It puts a bit of a downer on the day. We've mentioned to him that he's always missed on our days and we don't want to complain about his choice in friends. What are we to do? Simply not inviting him doesn't seem an option, and having a standby for his diary mishaps also seems unfair to whoever is waiting in the wings. We would love to get your advice on this.
Oh my God, I can't wait to go, but our guest is going first.
Well, being quite a traditionalist, that just seems to be quite bad form, doesn't it, really? In the fact that even though he's a paying, in inverted guest, you've asked him to join rather than have someone send in his place. Now, if he was, possibly send his son or his daughter, of course, or even his wife, then that might be more sort of, forthcoming. But replacing him with one of his chums is not really, bad form.
So what should he do? Just accept the loss and he just loses the space, he still has to pay?
Yeah, I think, absolutely. It's his fault he's double booked. He should have written it in his diary. Yes, it's an expensive mistake to make, but it's just, I'm sure we've all made the mistakes, and I have indeed double booked. And I'm sure we're all aware that you accept your first invitation, of course.
Yes.
Even if your second invitation is with the king, you always accept the first one.
we can have a conversation in a minute about when that rule becomes acceptable, that it's not the rule anymore. What has to be the case?
I don't think it's ever acceptable, Chris. But you were desperate to come in on this, though, Chris. So tell me.
I'm glad Alex has said what he said. He's absolutely right. I think there is only one answer to this, which is really sorry, chaps. I've double booked myself. I won't be there. Enjoy my peg. Send me a photo. That is the only answer he can give.
Yes, but do you not think it sounds like the guys actually kind of want him to be there on the day? It's not so much necessarily about the filling of the peg. So how do they try and make it so that the bloke actually turns up, which I think is what they'd really like?
Well, exactly. So the specific answer to his question is the one that Alex and I have said. However, you're absolutely right that what they want to take this back to: how do we get this guy stop double booking himself? Which obviously is not something you do 2 or 3 times a year. That's just a better offer, and that's where this is going. Surely, are we in agreement that that's what's happening here?
Well, yeah. Is he just wildly disorganized in every aspect of his life? Does he just need some a poke a month or so before? Don't forget, you're coming on this day with us, or is there something else going on? Is it the better invitation syndrome?
Well, the fact that one of the group has messaged in the pod, this is clearly not the first, second, or even maybe third time that this has happened. So you'd hope that on that basis, they are sending messages. So the bit that I think they've got wrong is when he mentioned the mothballed WhatsApp group, that needs to stay alive.
Yeah.
Otherwise he's definitely forgetting, isn't he?
I mean, if I can bring something to attention, this is the modern world with WhatsApps. Imagine back in the day when you received a letter through the post inviting you. The WhatsApps are there. It might come down to actually 3 strikes and you're out. Why are you joining us, mate? Yeah, you're a great. Yeah, you're a lousy shot. So there's more game for us. But actually, if you're not going to turn up, then WhatsApps are there. It's great. No, he's out.
I wonder back in 1920 how many people didn't turn up on shoot days, and you just never knew until you saw them 2 months later. What happened?
Yeah.
Well, and conversely, the slightly forgetful host who's sort of forgotten how many people he's invited, and then you pitch up on the day and they go, "Oh Christ, I wasn't expecting you."
That would have been hilarious.
I've been lucky enough to be on a shoot, or unlucky, but I've been on a shoot and on a day where someone has forgotten to turn up. And admittedly, it's only a little farm shoot, but it's still a shoot and it's still a day out. And if they've neglected to turn out, well, his loss or their loss.
I think I've told this story on a pod before. George will correct me, but my dad was on a day where they shot the first drive, or they were shooting the first drive, and halfway through the first drive, someone rocks up and stands on the end of the line. starts shooting away. He's like stood himself on sort of peg 10 equivalent, right? And the wind's going that way. He shoots quite a few, gets to the end of the drive, collects his birds, puts his gun over his shoulder, walks towards the other guns to say hello to everyone, and approaches them and goes, "Oh shit, I'm on the wrong shoot." He thought he was expecting to be on a different shoot.
Not only late, but late on the wrong shoot is a double whammy, isn't it?
So he shot half a drive of someone else's shoot and then buggers off to go and find his friends.
So do we think they need to have a sort of intervention with this chap, though? Do they need to say, listen, like, we want you to be there, but it kind of sucks having your mates turn up instead? Or do they just need to be keeping that WhatsApp group alive between February and October so that he doesn't forget, so it doesn't slip his mind, so that he's, keeping all that excitement alive?
I've got an idea. Right. What they do, they keep inviting him because when he does turn up, he's good fun, yeah? They say to him, if you can't turn up, you lose the peg. They form a separate WhatsApp group with the whole team apart from him, and they call it the Lucky Sons and Daughters group. They draw out of the hat, when he can't come, which one of you is getting the call up, and one of the sons or daughters of the rest of the group fills the space because they know it's going to happen. There you go.
Good idea. Cracking.
That's a very elegant
and then it gives
solution.
the young an opportunity. Yeah, fantastic.
And they fill its place.
Like it.
And then the sons and daughters, the rest of the group, will be his best mate, and they'll never realise why they're so friendly to him.
They'll all be sending him spurious invitations to go and shoot at very prestigious shoots.
That's right.
Now you're getting clever. You won't believe it. A 400 bird days just popped up on the 29th of October. I'd love you to come as my guest.
Knowing full well that he's been invited elsewhere. Yeah.
They should just create fake LinkedIn profiles of people that could be in his industry and then send out random invites to him from this person.
Very good. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I like it.
Right. Well, a rare example of good advice on the podcast. I think we've solved that one.
Oh, I'm sorry about
that. Right. We've got an unpopular opinion. Oh, no, hold on. Alex, so basically you would have heard at the start George named the person. If you don't ask George the reason behind the name, he gets very upset. So, George, how come Miss Havisham? For those of us that aren't as clever as you.
Miss Havisham is from Dickens, and I've now forgotten the book, but she's famously a jilted lover. She was left at the altar. And I feel like our lonely soul here is missing the attentions of his friend or their friend.
Makes perfect sense now.
Far too intellectual for us. Crikey. Yeah.
Well, we will have that follow-up question in a minute, because this unpopular opinion is from someone that George has called Lassie, who says, I pick up on 2 shoots each week. Both are run by the same keeper with the same team of beaters and pickers up. My question and comments revolve around picking up and guests bringing their own dogs. Often discussed by my picking up colleagues are the guns who bring their dogs, sometimes a companion with dog, and expected to work their dogs from the peg. When a gun by today's shooting, are they paying for a number of birds or access to the infrastructure of the shoot? Usually, payment by the gun is calculated on the number of birds shot by counting the retrieved birds. So every bird that is not retrieved is not only potentially leaving a wounded bird behind, but is also an expense to the shoot owner, which soon adds up. It is beholden to any shoot to pick up all birds that are retrievable. This is undoubtedly made much more difficult with unknown dogs working, and it also takes longer between drives to make sure nothing is left behind. We always ask guns that arrive with a dog what they would like to achieve with their dog that day. Some are taking their dog for a walk, most want to pick some birds from around their pegs, but some want to do more. The main problem that we encounter is that these dogs are of unknown quality. We have had dogs that mouth and leave birds, dogs that eat birds or even bury them, yet the owner thinks that they can do no wrong. Thank goodness this does not apply to everyone who brings a dog. We have some guest companions who enjoy the challenge of working their dogs, and for them, we do try to include them in our lineup if they're so inclined. We try to allocate them on drives to stand where they can see their partner shooting, where they're not isolated and where they can give their dog some work. Being included as part of the team is sometimes appreciated far more than just standing with their gun all day. They enjoy the experience of working as part of our team, joining the camaraderie as well as the banter and stimulating conversation from the picking up team. It also has the advantage that we can see how their dog is working and whether we need help or sweep through at the end of the drive. Some enjoy our company so much they want to come back. So the essence of my communication is, if a gun buys a day's shooting at cost per bird, does this entitle them to work their dog? Should a dog of unknown quality be included in the picking up line? Should the guest advise the shoot beforehand that they are bringing a dog, and is this okay? Wowzers. Lassie has an opinion for sure.
But has skirted around what that opinion might actually be, I think.
I think she's trying to be... She? Lassie was a girl, yeah?
If you like, yeah, I don't know, really.
Lassie the dog was female.
I don't know.
Lassie could talk, let alone be a dog. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. At least they'd be able to pick up the pheasants trapped down the mine shaft, I suppose, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Exactly. Can you imagine being able to talk to your working dog? Just pop round there, up to the corner, right at the fence, over the back, and there's just one that's in the hedge over the behind.
I'm not sure about dog in the back of the Shooting Times. Is that still going? I can't remember it was a cartoon in the back of the Shooting Times. Can't remember the artist, but there was always like a sketch in the back of the Shooting Times where someone would, it was almost like the dog was taking the mick out of the shooter, standing there with a newspaper or whatever. Do you want me to shoot them instead? And things like that. Maybe that's Lassie.
So Lassie has definitely got her opinion. George, what are you feeling about Lassie's approach to this letter and her issue?
I think that the three questions at the end can be summed up with some fairly straightforward answers. We kind of touched on them before. Should the guest advise the shoot host beforehand that they're bringing a dog? Yes. It doesn't cost anything to do. It just makes everything easier all the time.
If you have the luxury of doing so, if you're a guest of someone, they might ask and then pass that on, but more often than not, they don't.
Yeah.
Which is still fine. So the shoot should just expect guns to bring dogs.
And I think I sort of feel, and you can correct me if you disagree, but I sort of feel that, yes, if you've bought a day's shooting, you are absolutely entitled to work your dog.
As we've covered on past pods, some people buy day shooting for their dog.
Yes, exactly, as a birthday present for the dog. Yeah. So I think that's a given, with the caveat, as always, that the dog has actually got to be reasonably, under control and able to do the job. Should a dog of unknown quality be included in the picking up line, I think is the more challenging one, because the answer is no, but that conflicts with the answer to the previous two. So not sure.
The way that she positioned the picking up line was very serious, and the way she described it, and I mean, like, if she'd given me that speech before, I'm not sure I'd want to say yes. I'd just be like, it's okay, I'll go somewhere else. Or do something else. It just seems, great if this is a sophisticated setup, run properly, lots of picking up dogs there, all doing the right thing, then it doesn't sound like it's appropriate for someone who's got a sort of half-trained dog to go and join them for the day, because it's obviously clearly doesn't sit right with Lassie. That's her opinion.
Alex, have you got a gun dog?
No, I don't. For lots of reasons. I don't have one yet, shall we say. I haven't been so settled with work and things and home life to get a dog yet, but now settled, probably will be on the cards, but I won't be calling it Lassie.
But I mean, I think we've all been on shoot days where there's a less than perfect gun dog in the line, but it's. I think that this person Lassie is starting from the right perspective, which is about ensuring that everything is picked and retrieved. And I can see how having a useless dog around might make that more awkward. But does the need to recover everything trump the paying gun's desire to bring their dog and work it?
It is. Well, gosh, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you don't. I don't believe that you pay for a day's shooting to train your dog or take your dog. Definitely not. If you are paying for shooting, then you pay for shooting. And surely if your dog was ill-behaved in whatever way or didn't work its work to pick up, you'd be embarrassed, wouldn't you? To be other things.
So I think some people just don't get embarrassed and they don't care, and that's where the issue is.
Oh, and that's a different. If they don't care or don't, then that's a different issue as well, isn't it? That's being a bit more but also, you should always ask if you can bring your dog, and whether you're a paying guest or not. And word gets around quite quickly that is if you're a regular, then other people will talk about such and such's dog is pretty useless. So you should always ask, definitely, whether you're a paying guest or not. And if they don't want you to bring your dog, then they should have the balls not to say, please don't bring your dog. We've heard it's going to ruin the rest of the day.
Yeah. You definitely want to avoid being the gun that's got a reputation as having a really bad dog. You might find your invitations dry up quite quickly.
Which drive is Lassie doing now? And where is Lassie picking up? We don't know. But agreed. Going back to one of your first points, everything that is hit, pricked, or not picked up is bad form. So more dogs the better, surely. And I've certainly been on some shoots where the pickers up will hang back if the gun has a dog that is well behaved and does do the job. They'll hang back after they've had a conversation and said, would you like your dog to pick up? The pickers up will say, and then the pickers up will come in and sweep the ground afterwards. That's absolutely fine. But I think it maybe it's down to the gun to try and work out the lassie's expectations.
The bit I was confused about is where she's sort of referring to the picking up team as opposed to just sort of a peg dog. The picking up team is a different group than a dog on the peg. I don't think just because you've got a dog, you're part of the picking up team.
Not at all.
And so where she's sort of getting a bit miffed about them doing a bad job, the dogs on the peg are very unlikely to be as good as the dogs way behind the line. Like, that's a given because they'll get out a lot more. That's just something, that's the hobby of those people. Mm-hmm. So when the dogs on the peg do a bad job, more often than not, like I'm sure all of us can relate to this, the other dogs will just sweep through, and if they miss one or two, they'll get collected. But where that dog does a particularly awful job, like is doing what this person is saying here, then obviously someone needs to step in and have a word and say, look, hold on, this dog's not handling the game in the way that we want the game to be handled. So that's a different issue. But I'm not really sure about the whole sort of joining the picking up team type sort of comment. You're very entitled to have, no one's ever going to say don't bring your dog unless they literally have heard and you're in the local area. But I mean, again, that's quite unlikely that word ever gets around like that. So yeah, I feel like, I don't know about this one.
I kind of see what they're trying to do there, though, because they're trying to make the gun's companion, the gun's guest who's handling the dog, feel like part of the team. And I think it's quite a noble sentiment. But I think that, yeah, you're right. There needs to be a distinction between peg dogs that are picking up around the peg and maybe doing, the odd retrieve in slightly more challenging circumstances, and the picking up team whose job is to sweep up after the guns dogs have done their bit. And I think you are blurring the lines there with the, as it were, professionals and the amateurs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you were going to put someone in a role in a football team and you no idea if they were any good or not, you'd make sure that someone around them was more than good enough to pick up for their mistakes. So I think the same thing applies here. Like, if you just put them there, then someone's got to have an eye on them and make sure they send their dogs through when that person just doesn't do the job.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so what? Where are we coming down then? Are we coming down on the side of unpopular opinion here, or popular opinion, or?
I sort of lost where the opinion was. I think the tone of her message feels like she's got a bit too far with this one and needs to reel back a little bit. That's
maybe ask her to write in again and just find down what you want us to say.
And that email address is pod@gunsonpegs.com. Right, let's move on then. We don't know is the answer. We're not sure. Very helpful, as always. Right, so on to Timbuk2, Timbuk 3. Alex, this is a segment where we ask our listeners to write in and let us know about drives that they know that have got particularly good names. And this one comes from Hagrid, who says, I would like to contribute a drive name from a local shoot that I used to occasionally do a bit of beating on. The drive was a tangled dell of thorn and bramble pushed into a strip of old conifers. Unfortunately, the conifer belt and many other woods on this small shoot were flattened by Storm Arwen and have been cleared of timber, so technically speaking, it could be classed as a forgotten drive as well. The name of the drive? The Hairy Hole.
It's not going to go down as one of those drives that gets talked about for years to come, is it?
It's not romantic.
It hasn't got the feeling of excitement attached to it. Does it?
I was number 5 on the Hairy Hole once.
Exactly. You were backgunning on the Hairy Hole.
Christ, I'm cutting that bit.
Yeah. Talking to a picker-up team. I think I've got 2 down at the Hairy Hole.
Just me. Alex, do you? We ask everybody this. Do you know of any shot of any drives that have got particularly creative names or ones that stick in the mind for you?
There's a local one to me where I've shot many a time on, which is quite pleasant, and it's not a funny one. It's a drive called The Worm, and the previous owner was very much into his flora and fauna, and he created in the bottom of this valley beetle banks, and they were built up in the bottom of the valley in an S sort of swale, sort of worm style going down through the valley, and it created a lot of butterflies, and it was planted with the wildflowers and bits and pieces. And in the spring and summer, it was absolutely divine to look at, because the amount of butterflies and insects and things that were there for wildlife was phenomenal. But of course, in the winter, it just looked like a grassy mound, to be fair. But it was called The Worm, and that's it. Yeah.
That's a great one. Really nice one. Very good. Well, I like that submission. Keep them coming in, please. I'm really enjoying these. I've got a couple more lined up, but the more the merrier. I'm really pleased with how this feature's going. It's only the second one we've had, Alex, and whenever we introduce a new feature, we're never quite sure whether anybody's going to be excited by it. But there's a few good ones rolling in, so it seems to be working.
You'll be pleased to hear we don't need to ask you about Lassie and Hagrid.
Yeah, I think they were self-explanatory, weren't they? Right, so Hagrid and Lassie and Miss Havisham, and now you, Alex, are the newest members of the Most Noble Order of the Garters, and will very soon be in receipt of a set of the much-coveted Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters. If you too have got a shooting confession, quandary, or a query that you'd like us and our guests to help you with, or if you've got an unpopular opinion to share, or if you'd like to tell us about a drive with a particularly good name and you would like a set of garters, drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com.
So, Alex, gunsmithing, we lined up some questions. We've been asking people what they would ask you. So we've definitely got a few of these to bring you in a minute. But so you mentioned at the start, you've got all this experience, which we've massively underestimated. What was your route into gunsmithing in the first place?
Wow. I was very much into hands-on engineering and things at school. And did lots of sort of bits and pieces in the metal workshop at school. But actually, when I left school, I studied for 2 years at Sparshot University to become a gamekeeper. Doing that, I mean, it was great, but certainly saw myself just still inclining to be actually repairing guns and having, sort of guns and bits and pieces were more interest to me. And obviously inside life as well, rather than outside life. The work of a gamekeeper is a lot harder than the one of a gunsmith in so many different ways. The inside life for me is probably a little bit more sort of appealing. But anyway, I was lucky enough to be shooting with the old firm's managing director, Mr. Laurie Hart, and he mentioned that he was looking for an apprentice. an apprentice gun maker. And I thought, yeah, well, that is exactly what I want to do. And I met him for a preliminary interview, and then had an interview. And finally, long story short, I got the job. A 6-year apprenticeship, all in-house. It was a very, very old school style apprenticeship. But it stood me in some real good stead for the future. Not only was I at the bench throughout, learning from my master, Mr. Peter Burden, but also we had a shop right at the front of the gunsmith, or the workshop, and we were buying and selling in there. We were selling Schofel barber and bits and pieces. A proper shop, a very traditional shop, and also we were selling guns as well. And as soon as the doorbell went, I used to go down and almost be front of house as well. So that stood me in good stead throughout my career with that. And I did that for 17 years. And then they actually they decided to retire. And then they relinquished the shop, and I left on a Friday working for BE Chaplin and moved in on a Monday, and all of it was mine. Alex Smith Guns.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You're a specialist in Old English guns, and I suppose that's partly down to the part of the country that we're in, perhaps. But how have you seen that market changing over time? How have things changed since you first took up your apprenticeship in that regard?
It certainly has changed in so many ways. The demise of the side-by-side in the shooting field really is apparent for whatever reason, I don't know. But I think to get started, there's certainly an old generation that were traditionally using side-by-sides in the field, and that generation are diminishing. They're either giving up shooting because they're unsteady on their feet, for whatever reason. Possibly they're even dying. And the side-by-side is like I say, for whatever reason, really is just diminishing in numbers. The je ne sais quoi of a side-by-side in the field is being lost.
What do you think that means for you and your colleagues in your profession then?
I wouldn't say it's a complete ticking time bomb for us but that's it's a very tricky question, because we don't know where the future is going to go. We certainly don't know where the future is going to go with game shooting in general, and whether that's going to change with guns. Of course it will, but how much for the side-by-side? If we can, I'd quite like to say that, and maybe this is a question to you guys, why do we try and beat ourselves with height when it comes to game birds, when we can do something much easier by trying to beat ourselves with the gun we use? And what I mean by that is, some people find it a lot easier to use with an over and under. Some people find it fine and easy, myself included, to shoot game with a side-by-side.
Well, yeah, I think I completely agree. You know, if you find that shooting is becoming too easy for you, instead of trying to find the highest possible bird, simply change your gun to one that you find harder to shoot, and you've refreshed the challenge for yourself, haven't you? I've got an interesting statistic though for you, Alex, and this comes from the game shooting census that we do every year, which is that actually for the last 5 years, the number of people reporting themselves as using a side-by-side as their regular game gun has actually been increasing.
That is a fantastic statistic. That's great. How does that compare to the amount of people that are coming into shooting?
It's not, well, I haven't done that maths actually. But
I know. Well, I think that looking at some other things, I'd say that's static from the number of people coming in, going out, and so on over the last few years. Certainly, it's just some data we're looking at. So I think that therefore that figure is a true figure. It's increasing. Yeah.
Interesting. So sometimes the analogy I use is you can have an Aston Martin DB5, which is a completely handmade car, for X amount of money. You're not going to use this as your daily car. Of course you're not. But it's nice to have, isn't it? And when you do take it out to use, it's a pleasure to drive. you can buy a handmade fine English shotgun for the same price that you're buying a brand new Beretta. And surely you're going to get much more pleasure out of that. You're not going to be able to go as fast, and you might not be able to shoot as accurately, but you're going to have such pleasure using it.
But that's the same as a classic car versus fast car market. I'm with you in that the classic car sounds lovely. I'd also like the modern fast one for certain scenarios, but I'd probably prefer to take the classic one out more often than not. And I think that applies to people's shotguns. But I was really intrigued by the way you asked that earlier question about why is it people feel the need to constantly sort of get the better and better bit of kit versus just drop down to a 20 bore or 28 bore or whatever. It made me think about other walks of life. And actually, the engineering part is part of this sort of human bettering point. So even if you constantly work on the engineering of the gun and the cartridge and all the other things, you're basically doing the furthest thing that man is capable of doing. And so I think that somewhere weird in the human mind, that becomes more fun than just going, well, how many flies can you shoot with an elastic band? Well, obviously, if I get a tennis racket, I'll kill more of them. But, so people, I just think they keep pushing themselves no matter what. I just think that's human greed or whatever you want to call it.
I possibly think it's greed, and possibly people because more and more people buy shooting, they want to get their bang for buck. They want to get their value for money. And if I can, and I've seen some people and heard of some people actually writing down, well, I've actually shot 5 on that drive, but I shot 10 on that drive, so I've got my money's worth already. And that's not that's not the way I stand and think. But modern guns don't shoot any better or kill any better than fine English shotguns.
You can shoot more with a modern gun, I reckon.
Why?
You could. Well, okay. My Henry Atkin breaks every 4 or 5 days shooting for one, but that's not the reason. I think certainly if you're going to hire birds, you'll have a cartridge that's more suitable for it when you're on higher birds, and you will be able to put more in the air, and it will have more impact at whatever distance. I don't know. I shoot my Rizzini on some high pheasants, and it's better than my Atkin. But I love swinging the Atkin on, on partridges, grouse, and the sort of more, traditional sort of syndicate shoot type thing. That's the way I see it, and I use both regularly.
But you're saying your Rizzini kills higher birds better.
I mean, obviously the human error is the biggest variation in that, but I'm saying I can put bigger cartridges through it,
and that's what kills taller birds.
It helps, doesn't it?
I'm enjoying this.
If I've got, if you've got a bigger cartridge that's appropriate for that gun on a higher bird, it would be better than my side-by-side lighter Atkin, which struggles to take it, as well as it not being that comfortable to shoot with anything more than 30 gram.
Right.
And so therefore it's better for the scenario. I'm not sure specifically whether physically it's better, but I will shoot better with it on that type of shoot.
Without going into a whole new different. Okay, you carry on with that, Chris. Yeah.
But I mean, Alex, it seems to me that you're obviously very passionate about making sure that these old English guns and the traditional way of doing things continues. And actually, one of the questions that we've had from our listeners, I think, is quite a good one in this regard, because obviously a lot of these older guns are inherited. So this person asked, I want my son or my daughter to be able to use my father's old gun, but the stock is too long. Is it simply a question of waiting for my child to grow so that it fits? Or what can you do there without obviously permanently ruining the gun? You probably don't want to cut the stock on a beautiful Holland, for example.
Well, I mean, getting a good gun fit is obviously paramount to whether it's just cutting it down and before you even sort of attack the stock, shall we say, getting a good quality gun fit from a good quality gun instructor, and an instructor that can actually use and fit a side by side. That probably obviously one of Chris's friends that only wants to use an over and under on tall birds, but it's very hard to actually find an instructor that can use and instruct with a side-by-side. You go to an introductory lesson, even at Holland's or West London or whatever, wherever, and the first thing they're going to shove into your hands is an over and under. Go back 40 years and it would have been a side-by-side. The likes of Ken Davis and David Olive from back round our way would have been a side by side, and it is an art of gun fitting, and without going down another rabbit hole of opening up a lot of things, it's very hard to do.
So with this person, if they've got an inherited gun, could you just remove the stock, keep that for later in life, or the original stock at least for the gun, just keep it to one side, and have a new stock made, still being balanced?
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
absolutely
what this person could do. But I mean, what sort of money would you be looking at to do that?
Take the analogy of a Holland and Holland Royal, whether it's an assisted opener or not, just a standard sort of Holland sidelock. We'd be probably looking around about 5,500 plus the VAT.
Okay.
For a single gun. But obviously, if the father really wants him to shoot with a gun, we can cut it down. Just cut it off, and reshape the back end, checker it. Not a problem. It's a common thing to do.
And presumably a lot cheaper.
Massively a lot cheaper. But also, we were a lot shorter when this Holland was. If we're using the Holland, when the Holland was made. People were shorter anyway. Yeah. Your average stock length might have been about 14 and a quarter, 14 and a half ish, give or take. So the chances of it needing any shorter than that, he probably should just be waiting a little bit longer anyway. There's a growth spurt that we all know about in between sort of 13 and 16 sort of thing. Just wait. Just hold your horses.
Have something as an interim and then have it when you're 18, 21 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. See if you really want to shoot with a side-by-side again, buy an AYA, job done.
So another question here. Someone says, I've got an Old English gun that probably needs, I'm coming back to that one, probably needs new barrels for steel. What would you suggest? Can I just add here? And actually, George, didn't we get you on this the other day? I think there's a lot of people that don't realise their gun will take standard steel. Post 1954, I think by and large, nearly all of them will take standard steel. Obviously, check first. George, wasn't it Edward King was looking at yours and suddenly realised it could do that?
When the announcement about the phase out of lead was first made, I thought, heck, I'd better look and see what chokes my gun's got in it, because I'd never even thought about it up until that point.
Just for everyone's benefit, why is it you needed to do that?
Well, because you're only supposed to put steel through half choke or less to avoid bulging the barrels.
Standard steel.
Standard steel, yes. So I looked at all the markings and I Googled what the markings might mean, and I couldn't find anything anywhere that told me anything reliable. All the proof marks and what have you were very confusing. So I then emailed AYA with the serial number, and they came back and told me it had quarter and full. However, when we were shooting with Edward King in the last week of the season, he had a look at it and went,
who imports AYA to the UK.
He had a look at it and went, no, those marks mean it's quarter and half. So he's now taken it away to just measure everything and confirm one way or the other.
Quarter and full would be quite an unusual barrel combo on a fixed choke gun, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, certainly in the English gun world. I mean, back early on, and I'm sure there are certainly some more knowledgeable people in the gun world that will understand this or back me up or even contradict me, that they only believed really in two chokes, and that was possibly improved cylinder, quarter and full, and that was it. And choke is measured from the bore size from the bore down to the end of the barrel. So you take it from the bore and then you count down in increments of a thousandth of an inch and down to when the at the end of the bore, at the end of the barrel, shall we say. And that is reduced in thousandths of an inch. And if it is 20 thousandths of an inch or more, it is tighter than half choke. So the crucial figure is 20. So if it's 25, 30, 40 thousandths of an inch from the bore in constriction, it is full choke.
Gotcha.
So one of these little choke measurers you can buy doesn't really tell you much, but it may, I assume it must tell you something, because it's going to tell you loosely on the scale where it is, but it's not going to tell you everything.
It's a rough guide, but I wouldn't trust it.
Cool.
Okay, so back to this question then. Old English gun, want to use steel. What's the process that you would advise this person to go through in terms of making sure that their gun can take it?
Well, it certainly is to do with the barrels, obviously, and the chamber length, the internal condition of the barrels, and make sure it's obviously still in proof, and then to measure the chokes. If the choke is tighter than half choke can be removed for you and able to take standard steel. What I would like to ask the question is Chris, you mentioned the date of 1954. I'd like to know where that date came from, because when we were first told we couldn't use lead on wildfowl, there was no mention of that date on English guns to shoot steel. There was no mention of anything like that. And no one has ever worried about using steel through English guns back then. It's just now that it's come into fruition.
So yeah, obviously I've read that date in a lot of the documents given out by, assuming, the two proof houses, which don't seem to agree on everything, which is another stupid scenario. The point is that we've got to be careful.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of misinformation out there. Obviously, the first thing to do, just take it to someone and ask. It's like we're going to come on to there's another question in here about getting a gun serviced anyway. So when you do that, ask the question and you'll be fine. In this scenario, so are you saying that if I have like a 1920 gun that's still got the barrels on it, let's assume that they are still thick enough and therefore in proof and so on, even if the choke is too tight, what can you do? Are you saying there's nothing you can do, replace the barrels, or can you sleeve them, or what are the options?
Not at all. I am saying that what you can do is, let's take for instance, is a standard Webley & Scott 700 with a quarter and full choke, which is a lot of them are. So we could remove the full choke down to half choke and you'd be fine, tickety-boo, on your way.
So it's not about the makeup of anything in the barrels, it's just the choking and the thickness.
Like I said earlier on, as long as the barrels and the gun are in good quality working order, I believe removing it to half choke is your best and only option. You can, of course, have it rebarreled at vast expense. You can indeed have it sleeved, again, at vast expense.
What's sleeving costing?
Sleeving costing is probably about £2,500-3,000 on a gun that is nowadays worth £500-700. If we take my analogy of Webley & Scott.
Oh yeah, sure. If you're doing it on that, I mean, if you're doing it on great grandfather's old Purdy and you want to keep using it, whatever.
If you want to keep using it to shoot non-toxic shot, to make it future-proof, use bismuth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My huge analogy on bismuth is you go on a day's shooting, so let's say it's a 100-bird shoot, maybe a 200-bird shoot. How many cartridges are you going to use? 150? Well, let's say that's 150 pounds worth of bismuth, give or take. Well, you've taken your other half out for a meal. That's cost you 150 pounds. You filled your Range Rover up, Chris, with fuel. That's 150 pounds. Cartridges, even if they're bismuth, are still the cheapest part of the day's sport.
Fine. There's something interesting. So the 1954 thing that they're probably alluding to is that they didn't at that point check at different pressures or at a certain level where maybe they just can't be sure is what you're saying. So it would just need checking. So if you were to check it, you'd be able to say barrel thickness is fine, choke's okay, you're fine. That's what you're saying.
Yes, I'm sure I'm right. I'm sure I'm wrong. There are someone out there with a much more...
If you are, they'll definitely tell us.
No,
Oh, good. I hope so. You can write to me at...
pod@gunsonpegs.com.
We'll just put the address in. It's more fun.
That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Hate mail. Can't wait. Yeah. But yes, I mean, but if I go back to bismuth is a far better performing, a closer to lead than steel ever will be.
Yeah.
And I am putting that out there, and I don't care what anyone says.
You're absolutely right. The periodic table suggests it.
A lot of my old customers will say, I tried bismuth back in the day when they first had to for the foreshore shooting and bits and pieces, and they said it's rubbish. I said, yes, it may well be, but have you tried steel?
I mean, I used bismuth on that podcast shoot day we had, Chris, as everybody took great delight in calling me a millionaire. And, you know, as effectively 150 bird day that we were shooting, I fired 2 boxes of cartridges, which is, you know, nothing in the grand scheme of it. And, you know, they were fantastic as well.
You aren't really noticing. This is the thing, yeah. But the whole concept of bismuth crap, steel's crap, like, it takes someone to really know. The vast majority of people that go shooting, certainly that I've seen, you just don't know. And also you have to be on a certain type of shoot as well where you're really going to get it tested.
Agreed. You're dead right there. You're dead right.
I've been using steel for the last few years now. And basically bugger all difference.
So I've got another listener question, Alex, which is an interesting one, I think. And they said, I've got a nice gun, but the woodwork isn't the prettiest. Is there anything I can do at home to make it a bit smarter? And then the follow-up question, what would you do if I brought it in?
I've had this a lot. I had a go at tidying the stock up at home, but it's gone wrong. By all means, have a go at home. Absolutely fine. Depends on what went wrong, how bad it's gone, and things like that. Yeah, Berettas, for instance, they went through a stage of putting a lacquer on the outside of the stock, and that's great. That lacquer is phenomenal. It's hard wearing, it's waterproof, and it's great until you dink it. As soon as you dink it, you break the surface of the lacquer, and then you almost have to strip the whole lacquer off, restart it, or you can patch it. Patching it, you're always going to see. So unless you're a French polisher as your profession, don't touch the stock.
Fair enough. Farrow and Bull don't do a stock paint, so don't try that.
No, they don't. No. But
right. So, and if you bring it in, are you going to stick a lacquer on? Is that what people ask you to do, or do you just?
We do it at a vast range of different styles of finish, and there's guys out there. I can't quite remember his name, but I've seen him on Instagram and things. Who the finish that he comes up with is phenomenal. It's absolutely like a mirror gloss, high shine finish, and that's fantastic. That's really good, but a little bit impractical if you ask me. The true traditional French polished deep finish, where you bring out the grain and the depth of color that you can see. You almost look into it and you can see different colors, and it almost looks almost 3D with different depths of grain and things. But back in the day, I mean, it's come round that the first thing we look at is the wood.
Yeah.
We go along a rack of guns and go, oh, that's a nice piece of wood. What's the gun? Wow, that's a lovely piece of wood. What's the gun? Well, actually, again, you know, in the height of English guns, it was merely just the way of holding the gun. You know, some of those very old Purdy's and things, you know, it was the straighter the grain, the better. Better because it was stronger. You know, a lot of the old rifles, the double rifles, you know, the express rifles, had to have straight grain. less figure means a stronger stock. And we're seeing that a lot with the American fire walnuts on the Brownings and the Marukus. They won't admit it, but they snap stocks. A Maruku grade 5 is going to break.
Interesting. And so, for example,
more hate mail.
The stock on my AYA, it's not highly figured. It's not particularly tight grain, nothing like that. Is there, in terms of jazzing it up, you are limited to what you can achieve by the wood that you're working with in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can't add figure in unless you want to paint it. We don't condone that type of thing. I can do it for you. I'm sure I can go down the local nursery school and ask someone to paint it for you, but it won't add anything to you, and it might make you feel a bit better by looking at it when you've got nothing to shoot at, but it's not going to waste of time. We can add color. Color is a different thing. And sometimes adding a bit of color gives a little bit more depth into the grain. But anything other than that, just crack on.
There's a question here which really resonated with me. It's a quick one. People talk about snap caps. When should they be used and how important are they? Because I really feel like snap caps is something people used to talk about. What's your opinion?
We use snap caps in the workshop, obviously, for testing and making sure the ejectors are in time. And one should always, with an English gun, you should release the strikers onto something, whether that's a snap cap or a striker block.
And if you're putting the gun in at the end of the season for a while, should you release the tension on a snap cap, leave the snap caps in with the triggers basically pulled without recocking it?
No, not at all. There is no benefit from releasing springs on a snap cap on an English gun. A second analogy again is the fact on your car. You don't release the springs on your car when you put it up on blocks, for instance, every night. Why should you do it with a gun?
Fine. I mean, so why is it people need snap caps, or they just don't? Is what you're saying? Unless you're testing striking time.
Unless you're testing. Again, there's a great film called The Shooting Party, and there's a scene in there where there is, I can't remember his name, but there's a gentleman in the gun room on this film, and he is practicing pulling the trigger and mounting the gun. And as he mounts, he's pulling the trigger. And that is when you would use snap caps, and he uses snap caps in the film.
Fine. All right, let's solve that one. They're basically unnecessary.
Completely unnecessary, unless you want to practice pulling the trigger.
Fine. Cool.
Going back to what we were talking about stocks and painting them and so on. Somebody's asked, have you ever been asked to do something to someone's gun that you've refused to do for reasons of taste?
Reasons of taste? No. From the expression on my face and questioning, they'll understand that I don't want to do it. But for taste-wise, generally, I won't do something if it is unsafe, and I would advise if it is unsafe to do for whatever reason, like removing or welding up the safety catch, for instance, so the safety catch doesn't engage or work, for instance. I've been asked to do that before, and that just doesn't work. Taking trigger pulls down to 1.5 pounds, for instance, because he wanted, as soon as it hit his shoulder, he wanted the gun to go off. Well, that's just unsafe. So I don't take trigger pulls down to what I believe is an unsafe poundage.
So we got 2 more questions, and I definitely get through them because it's great having these. So someone says, I've heard that keeping a gun in the cabinet with the stock down can cause issues. Does it matter which way up I store my gun? I've heard this too in relation to oil. Is there anything in this?
Yeah, there is something into that. Yeah, there is. For a long period of time, say for instance, it's the 1st of February, and you're putting it away until you're shooting one of those dreaded simulated days, and and you're not going to use it until then. Yes, of course, put it barrels down, definitely.
Because you're spraying a bit of oil down the barrel. Usually, people spray a bit of oil at the end of the season down the barrel, or even during the season. And what is it therefore that oil can make its way into stock? And assuming, I'm guessing here, oil in stock creates weakness.
Correct, it does. Yeah, it does indeed. Yeah, obviously over a long period of time, it's not going to happen overnight. Yes, you really must. You really must. But then again, there's no reason to actually store your gun with that amount of oil in it, inside the barrels or outside. As long as your gun cabinet is clean, dry, you don't need to store that much oil in it. It's quite literally the only thing that's going to get straight into the stock is when you spray with your spray oil into the striker holes, for instance, or smother it with oil on the outside. No need to do that.
Perfect. Very helpful, this. Right, last question, George.
Yeah, so again, another listener question. So from a gunsmith's point of view, i.e. the quality of the craftsmanship, if money was no object, which gun should I be buying?
That's a personal choice question, isn't it?
Okay, which gun would you buy?
I'd buy a Boss.
Side by side?
How come?
Oh, sorry. I'd buy another Boss side by side, and I'd buy another Boss over and under. Yeah. Yeah.
What's is there any particular reasoning?
The quality and craftsmanship of Boss still is second to none. It is still English gun. It is still they make so few that they can still produce some of the best guns only. Period. Done. Yeah.
Right. Well, really helpful. This has been really interesting. Get a whole load of issues sorted. I did say at the start we would be asking all the questions that you don't want anyone to come in, stand there asking you. So we just wasted your time now, and we'll put it out to everyone. Kill all the birds with one stone. There we go.
Not at all. I mean, you've been very tame, in fact. Yeah.
Good. Well, as you probably heard, the way that we finish these pods off is with desert island shooting. So this is the scenario where the extinction level asteroid hits tomorrow. Your affairs are in order, loved ones and enemies reconciled, dogs fed, tomatoes watered. Your last day begins how?
I need to try and invent and find a time machine.
We've got one.
Yeah, it's fully branded as well, so don't worry.
I would love to go back to Ripon's days and shoot some of those historical places, and it would be very close to home, on Lord Rank's estate, which is at Sutton Scotney, and all around the English partridge of the big huge hedges where the English partridge would be driven for miles, and they would come over as coveys and starburst in front of you in the traditional English way. Double guns with gentlemen, followed by definitely breaking for lunch. Definitely. I'm a strong believer in having a lunch in the field under on a lovely September day under canvas, an open safari style tent, with good quality wine, obviously cigars, and then finishing with a penultimate drive. Phenomenal. Yeah. Good days with gentlemen.
So here's a fun fact for you, and you might know this already, actually, Alex, but my dad's 20 bore is labelled number 3, and it was one of 4 that were owned by Lord Rank.
Wow. That's fantastic.
What cigar are you having for the day?
I've got a Partagas D4.
But on that day, you're going back in time. You're taking whichever one you want.
Do you know what? Do you know why I would smoke that still? Because it's a cigar I like. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a pretentiously.
No, sure.
Yeah.
Just in case you had one.
I love those cigars. They are good everyday cigars. Not my morning cigar, but that is a good everyday cigar.
And would you be taking anyone in particular with you on this day? Who are the other gents on your gentleman's day?
Oh, I've got some good friends that would probably want to join me. I'm not sure I'd want them to join me because they're too good at shots compared to I. So I would certainly take someone that taught me to shoot, and a chap called Nick Silk. He taught me a lot, and he's a fine pigeon shot as well. I would love to stand as well with Lord Ripon, possibly not shoot next to him because I'm not sure I'd get much sport. But I'd love to see him shoot, or have seen him shoot. I think on the day also possibly Churchill, of course, just to hear some of his stories from early days, and then Jim Corbett.
Yeah,
I think he's probably trumps a lot of people with some stories of man-eating tigers and things like that. Yeah, no, that would be cool.
That's a very good one. That's got many very good ingredients to that day, I think.
Yeah,
it could go on and on. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Gosh.
But I don't think I'd be able to invite Lassie along, just in case.
Lassie and the team is just who you need there to get them all collected. So
great. Well, Alex, thank you ever so much for taking the time, and thanks for joining us.
No, not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, really good of you, Alex. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you.
Right, so before we go, all that remains for me to say is there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas or your unpopular opinions, or sharing a drive with a particularly good name. Drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or any future episodes, we'll send you some garters. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, but until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.
Wow.